the black maid secretly took her daughter to the millionaire's mansion. His reaction shocked everyone. Nia Adebayo is an African immigrant who fights every day to support her daughter on her own, working as a maid in Atlanta. Quiet and resilient, she faces judgmental looks and the weight of hardship, until her path crosses with that of Jonathan Whitmore, a cold, widowed millionaire trapped in his own pain. Two completely different worlds meet inside the same mansion, revealing contrasts that go far beyond wealth and poverty. What begins as a clash of realities soon turns into a coexistence filled with tension, discoveries, and feelings neither of them expected. Through injustice, tough choices, and moments of surrender, a story is born that defies barriers and transforms lives. Before we dive into this emotional story, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories reach. And if you're into intense love stories full of twists and overcoming hardships, make sure to subscribe to the channel. That way, you won't miss any updates and you'll be helping this space grow more and more. The phone alarm vibrates at 4:47 a.m. Nia Adebayo, 32 years old, wakes up before the persistent buzz, as if her body has already adapted to the daily struggle. Her ebony-toned skin contrasts with the cold light of the simple room. Her long, curly hair is tied in a low bun, a sign of the rush. Around her neck, a thin silver chain, inherited from her mother, rests like a charm. She puts on the light green uniform ironed the night before and takes a deep breath, searching for courage in the silence. The studio apartment she lives in Southwest Atlanta, is small and meticulously organized. A mattress by the window, a worn-out dresser, 2 glass cups, an electric stove bearing signs of use. On top of the fridge, a drawing made by Layla, 2 hands holding each other under a yellow sun. Nia smiles, tired but proud. She opens her backpack, checks the lunchbox with rice and shredded chicken, and the cookies she promised her daughter. Her eyes stop on the note taped inside. "Mommy will come back. I promise." She walks over to the bed where Layla is sleeping, 7 years old, light brown skin and hair in little buns, hugging a worn-out teddy bear. The girl breathes softly, dreaming. Nia gently runs her hand over her daughter's forehead and whispers, "Today is going to work out, my love." Deep down, she knows she has no one to leave her with. The neighbor who sometimes helps spent the night at the hospital with her own granddaughter. The public daycare only opens at 8, and missing work is not an option. Nia closes her eyes for a moment, heavy with responsibility. "Layla, wake up, little star." The girl blinks, confused, and smiles when she sees her mother. "Is it morning already?" "Almost." "I have to work early today. Let's get ready together, okay? I'm going with you." Nia hesitates. "You're going to stay really quiet. I promise it's just for today. It's our little secret." While the water boils for a simple tea, Nia gets her daughter dressed, a gray hoodie, cotton pants, and white sneakers that aren't quite white anymore. She carefully styles her buns, one on each side, and kisses the top of her head. Layla notices the silver chain. "Grandma used to wear that." "Right, she did. And it gave me courage. Now it gives courage to both of us." The sky is still dark as the two step out onto the sidewalk. The cold early morning wind bites, and Nia tightens her daughter's hand inside her coat pocket. The bus stop is nearly empty. An older man folds newspapers. A young man listens to music through headphones. When the bus arrives, Nia sets her backpack at her feet and lifts Layla into her arms for a few seconds, as if she could shield her from the whole world just with her embrace. The vehicle crosses wide avenues, the wet asphalt reflecting headlights. The city slowly wakes. Gas stations lit up, coffee shops opening, delivery trucks on the move. The distant skyline reminding them that Atlanta has 1,000 faces. Layla presses her face against the window. "Mommy, look. It looks like a star on the ground. That's the city winking at you. One day, we're going to go all the way up there and see everything from above. Promise. I promise." The scenery starts to change. Low buildings give way to tree-lined streets, immaculate sidewalks, and tall gates. Buckhead. Nia always feels the transition in her gut. It's like crossing an invisible border. The bus stops a few blocks from the mansion where she works. Nia gets off with Layla, and before moving on, kneels on the sidewalk to meet her daughter at eye level. "Pay attention. Layla, you're going to stay really close to me the whole time. No running, no loud talking. And if I say now, you hide, okay? Okay? But why do we have to hide? Because some people don't understand and think our place is only where they decide, and I need this job." Layla holds the teddy bear by its paw. "I'll be your shadow." The Whitmore mansion appears behind a wrought iron gate. The stone path leads to a large white house with modern lines, tall glass windows, and a perfectly manicured garden. The grass looks like a tapestry, and the motion lights turn on as they approach the service entrance. The air smells of cypress and something too expensive to name. Nia breathes in, mentally reviewing the routine, like someone rehearsing dance steps that can't be wrong. She punches in the code at the service door and enters the staff hallway. The floor is bright and cold. Metallic lockers hold cleaning supplies. In the corner, a cart with cloths, sprays, gloves, trash bags. Nia puts on gloves, hands an activity book to Layla, and opens the lid of the cart's bottom compartment. A dirty laundry bin hardly anyone uses at that hour. It's not the ideal plan, it's the only one possible. "Layla, this is really important. When I say so, you get in here and stay quiet. I'll leave a little gap for air and stay close, okay? I'm scared of the dark. I'll be right next to you. If you knock 3 times, I'll open it. 3 little taps, okay? 3 taps." Layla smiles shyly. "You're brave, Mommy. Today, I learned from you." The wall radio crackles with a reminder about the driver arriving with groceries. The household routine begins to pulse. Nia straightens the badge in her pocket, sanitizes her hands, checks the schedule for the day. Main rooms, hallways, library, entrance hall. Jonathan Whitmore usually leaves before 8 for the office and returns late. Even in his absence, his presence commands order. Nia has already learned the rhythm of that house. The hallway where no one talks, the stair that never creaks, the room where paintings are aligned to the millimeter. She pushes the cart, head down, professional, steps discreet. She's learned to turn herself invisible. Layla walks close to her mother's leg, following the silent choreography. As they near the main hallway, Nia hears voices. 2 maids chatting, soft laughter, footsteps approaching. Her heart races. "Now," she whispers. Layla gently climbs into the compartment. Nia covers it with a sheet, leaves a small gap, and rests her hand there for a moment, reassuring her presence. The 2 women pass by without noticing, complaining about the air conditioning. Nia smiles at them like someone who knows her place. "Good morning." "Morning." "Nia." A quick glance from head to toe, and they move on. In the marble hallway, everything shines. Nia fills the bucket, measures the cleaning product precisely, and starts with the outer parts of the frames to avoid leaving marks. Her body moves on autopilot, her mind doing the math. Rent, gas, the new notebooks Layla wants, the money transfer she owes her aunt. Between steps, she checks the small gap. The little honey-colored eye watches her, trusting. Everything okay in there, little star? Everything. 3 taps if I need you, right? 3 taps. A low noise echoes from the main entrance. The electronic gate sensor, maybe. Nia holds her breath. If it's security, fine. If it's the housekeeper, there'll be questions. If it's Jonathan. She tries to maintain her rhythm, wipe forward, wipe back, as if keeping pace could control fate. Do you need anything, Nia? A male voice came from behind. It was the morning shift security guard, polite and predictable. Just fresh water for the bucket, please. She smiled. We started early today, full house later. He pointed with his chin. Big meeting. Understood. The man walked away. Nia closed her eyes for a second, grateful. She touched the silver chain and resumed cleaning. Layla, hidden in her spot, mentally drew a map of the house, counting time by her mother's footsteps. Nia felt the weight and dignity of that moment. It wasn't a comfortable choice. It was what one does when survival demands it. And even in the middle of fear, a thread of hope was born. Maybe, just maybe, the day wouldn't end in loss. She pushed the cart to the end of the hallway, where a dark wooden door led to a room she didn't know well yet. The sun had started coming through the tall windows, spreading a timid golden light across the floor. Nia whispered, almost like a prayer, just for today, just today, let it work. And she pushed the door open, carrying with her the hidden daughter, a heart racing, and the courage of someone who can never give up. The wooden door creaked softly as Nia pushed it open. The room was spacious, lined with bookshelves up to the ceiling, books arranged by color and size, an unlit fireplace, and the woody scent of freshly applied wax. She quietly adjusted the cart, picked up a damp cloth, and began cleaning the frames, each movement measured as if part of an invisible ritual. The tension from the previous minutes still pulsed in her chest, but the rhythm of the tasks calmed her. While Nia was focused, she didn't notice that Layla, restless in her hiding place, took advantage of her mother's distraction. The open gap looked like an invitation. The little girl slowly slid out, held the bear by its paw, and stepped lightly onto the marble floor. Her honey-colored eyes lit up at the sight of the tall stained glass windows, reflecting golden rays that multiplied like a magical castle. Wow, she whispered softly, almost without realizing. Childlike curiosity overcame fear. She walked across the hallway on light feet, following the sound of distant voices and the clinking of glasses being arranged in another wing of the mansion. Nia, with her back turned, didn't see the silent escape. Layla turned a corner and came face to face with an imposing figure. Jonathan Whitmore, 38 years old, stood near a wide window, the glass reflecting his elegant silhouette. He wore a dark gray suit, his tie straightened, his dark brown hair perfectly combed. His intense blue eyes looked distant, lost in memories he didn't share with anyone. In his hand, he held a steaming cup of coffee. Layla stopped just a few steps from him, enchanted and unafraid. The silence was broken by her sweet voice. "Hi. Do you live here?" Jonathan raised his eyes, surprised. For a moment, his heart sped up. He wasn't used to surprises inside his own home. He studied the girl. Light brown skin, little buns in her hair, a smile that challenged the coldness of the room. He didn't answer immediately, just looked at her, as if his mind was processing an old memory, the image of his own son, still small, laughing with his late wife in the garden. Layla clutched the bear to her chest and continued, "Not intimidated. I got lost. But the house is so big it feels like a maze." The child's voice pierced Jonathan's invisible armor. For the first time in a long while, he wasn't thinking about numbers, contracts, or meetings, but about the emptiness left after losing his wife. The girl's spontaneity touched an open wound, and something in him hesitated between sending her away or simply letting her stay. He placed the cup on the glass table and leaned forward slightly. "What's your name?" "Layla," she answered without fear. "And you?" Jonathan almost smiled, but held back the gesture. "Jonathan," silence returned, but it was no longer the same. There was a strange familiarity between them, as if the purity of the child had entered a space where loneliness had reigned. At that exact moment, Nia noticed her daughter was gone. Panic rushed through her. She dropped the cloth, ran through the hallway, and froze at the sight. Her little girl standing before her boss. Her heart pounded so loud it seemed to echo. "Layla." Her voice came out low, full of fear. She approached quickly, eyes wide, breath caught. "I'm sorry, Mr. Whitmore." Jonathan raised a hand, asking for silence. His eyes remained fixed on Layla, as if he was still processing that unexpected encounter. Nia, her face marked by anxiety, held her daughter by the shoulders, ready to apologize and accept the consequences. But Jonathan didn't interrupt with coldness. He simply observed, thoughtful, as if a piece of humanity he thought he had lost had just walked through the door with that child. Tension filled the air. Nia felt the weight of every second, not knowing whether this would be the end of her job or the beginning of something she couldn't predict. Nia's heart felt like it was about to leap from her chest. She held Layla firmly, her face pale with fear, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. The large room, its walls covered in paintings by renowned artists, felt suffocating. The silence among the three weighed heavier than any words. "Mr. Whitmore." "Please forgive me," Nia said, her voice trembling. "I had no one to leave my daughter with. If I brought her with me, it was out of desperation. I beg you not to think I did this carelessly." Layla, confused, looked between the two, clutching the worn-out stuffed bear to her chest. Jonathan remained still, hands clasped behind his back, his blue gaze so intense it felt like it was piercing Nia's soul. He slowly walked over to the glass table, set down the still warm coffee cup, and took a deep breath. "You knew the rules," he replied firmly, his deep voice echoing through the room. "Staff are not allowed to bring children into this house. This is a workspace, a place that requires order." Nia lowered her head, tears falling onto her light green uniform. "I know, sir. I know I failed, but Layla is all I have. No family, no one to help. I didn't want to. I didn't want to take the risk, but I also couldn't leave her alone." Jonathan narrowed his eyes, still conflicted. He looked at her with a mix of irritation and something he couldn't quite name. A flicker of compassion. The image of that humble woman, trembling with fear, clashed with the grandeur of the mansion where nothing was lacking. Layla broke the silence, her soft voice filling the heavy air. "It's not Mommy's fault. I just wanted to see the big windows." Jonathan looked away for a moment, struck by the innocence. The memory of his young son, now motherless, pressed hard on his chest. He took a deep breath and walked toward Nia, stopping a few steps in front of her. "Look at me," he ordered. Nia slowly lifted her face, her teary eyes meeting his. "This time, I won't punish you. But understand that I don't tolerate disobedience." His voice was firm, but there was a shadow of humanity in every syllable. If this happens again, there will be no excuses. Nia nodded quickly, sobbing, "Thank you, Mr. Whitmore. Thank you. I won't disappoint you again." Jonathan stepped back, as if needing to recover the mask he wore. He knew he should be relentless, but something about that scene had cracked part of his coldness. The difference between them, the quiet wealth reflected in the walls and the poverty hidden in Nia's dignity, had never felt so loud. The tension hung like a stretched rope, about to snap. Nia held Layla tightly, as if trying to protect her not only from the world, but also from the invisible weight of that house. Jonathan, still with his back turned, closed his eyes for a second. "Get back to work," he said at last, without turning around, "and keep your daughter out of sight." Nia took a deep breath, holding back her tears. "Yes, sir," as she walked away with the cleaning cart, pushing it with trembling hands and holding Layla's hand with the other. She couldn't help but feel the abyss that separated them. The mansion gleamed with luxury, but her heart carried scars no amount of gold could erase. Still, something remained. Jonathan, alone in the room, could still see Layla's eyes in his mind even with his own closed. The purity of that girl had planted a seed he wasn't sure he could remove. If you made it this far, comment "overcoming." That way I'll know you're enjoying the story, and will confuse the people who only read the comments. Nia had lowered her head, still ashamed of what had just happened. But Layla, as if unaware of the tension in the air, pulled the teddy bear from the pocket of her sweatshirt and sat on the cold marble floor of the room. She took a few colorful wooden blocks from her backpack and started stacking them with the calm only a child possesses. The heavy silence was broken by the soft sound of the blocks clicking into place. Within seconds, Jonathan's young son, his curious eyes and messy dark brown hair, appeared at the door. He hesitated, observed Layla, and then ran over to her with a smile that hadn't been seen in weeks around that house. "Do you want to play with me?" Layla asked cheerfully. The boy nodded, shy at first, but soon laughing when the tower of blocks fell. Their laughter echoed through the room, filling it with life. For the first time in a long while, the cold marble, the walls covered in expensive art, and the atmosphere of rigidity were invaded by the sounds of childhood. Jonathan stood at a distance, motionless, as if he were witnessing something he hadn't seen since his wife's death. Innocence and joy. His blue eyes followed every movement, every laugh, and without realizing it, they landed on Nia. She was watching the children patiently, helping them rebuild the block tower, gently reminding Layla to share the toy, and lightly brushing the boy's hair back when he wobbled. The tenderness in her gestures wasn't forced. It was natural, as if she had been born to care. Jonathan felt something unfamiliar tighten in his chest. That woman, who until recently he had seen as just another employee, now revealed a quiet strength. She endured pain, carried immense responsibility, and yet was still capable of radiating peace. Layla, unaware, looked at Jonathan and smiled, as if inviting him to join. "Mr. Jonathan, come play too. It's more fun when there are more people." Nia nearly fainted from the boldness of her daughter. "Layla, don't bother the gentleman." But Jonathan wasn't offended. On the contrary, his serious face wavered for a moment, almost forming a smile. He took a step forward but quickly stopped, as if something was keeping him from crossing the invisible line between authority and affection. I'm not very good at that," he murmured, his voice softer than usual. Layla insisted, holding out a colorful block toward him. "You don't have to be good, you just have to laugh." Jonathan stared at the small object in her hand and, for the first time in months, let out a sigh that nearly sounded like a stifled laugh. He didn't take the block, but he didn't leave the room either. He stayed there, watching, as if he'd been pulled from the cold world of business and placed back into something he thought he had lost. Nia, noticing, lowered her eyes to hide her emotion. She felt a lump in her throat. Perhaps this was the beginning of something she didn't dare even imagine. Jonathan, still motionless, whispered almost to himself, "How long has it been since I heard this house breathe?" The words lingered in the air, filled with melancholy and revelation. Nia heard them but pretended not to, so as not to break the wall of silence that was slowly beginning to crack. The children's laughter still echoed through the room when Layla placed her hand on her stomach and murmured with the innocence that always exposed inconvenient truths, "Mommy, I'm hungry." Nia froze inside, fully aware of where they were, fully aware that not even in her dreams would she dare use the kitchen of a mansion that didn't belong to her. She stood up quickly, adjusting her wrinkled uniform. "I brought cookies in the backpack, Layla. We can have a quick snack in the hallway." Jonathan, still standing and watching from a distance, furrowed his brow. "There's plenty of food in the kitchen. There's no reason she should eat in secret." Nia blinked, surprised. "Mr. Whitmore, I don't want to cross any boundaries." He turned to her, firm but with an unexpected gentleness. "It's not crossing boundaries. It's a hungry child." Layla smiled, delighted by the permission, and ran to her mother, tugging on her hand. "Please, Mommy, make it like you do at home. I like it better that way." Nia's heart tightened. The kitchen was modern, equipped with state-of-the-art appliances, stainless steel gleaming, polished marble countertops, shelves full of expensive ingredients. She felt like an intruder, but she couldn't deny her daughter. She took a deep breath, opened the backpack, and pulled out a small container of rice and shredded chicken she had prepared the night before. Jonathan crossed his arms, curious. "You brought food from home?" Nia, unable to meet his gaze, replied, "It's what we had. I always prepare it so Layla doesn't go hungry. It's simple, but it's what I can give her." That moment seemed to carry the full weight of the inequality between them. On one side, the mansion with its private chefs, on the other, a reheated homemade meal. With steady, though embarrassed hands, Nia prepared 2 simple plates, adding some chopped vegetables she found in the refrigerator. The familiar scent of homemade seasoning filled the air, soft and comforting, contrasting with an environment usually marked by cold, sophisticated dishes. Layla took her first bite and closed her eyes in delight. "Just like at home. Mommy, I love it." Jonathan, hesitant, pulled out a chair. He picked up a fork and tried a small portion. The taste surprised him. It wasn't refined, but it carried a nostalgia he hadn't expected. He remembered being a child, sitting at his mother's table, before his life became a series of protocols, business trips, and meals served by strangers. He looked at Nia, and for a moment, he didn't see just a staff member. He saw a woman who, even in the struggle to survive, could turn simple food into comfort and memory. "It's good," he said, almost emotionless, but the pause in his speech revealed more than his words. Nia looked away, trying to hide her blush. "Thank you, sir." The silence between them was broken only by the children laughing and playing around the table. But there was something new in the air, an invisible opening between 2 worlds that were never meant to meet. Jonathan held the fork for another moment, but instead of continuing to eat, he just sat there, staring at the scene before him, Nia helping the children, smiling quietly as she fixed Layla's plate and gently wiped his son's mouth when he made a mess. For the first time in years, he felt human warmth inside his own house. His gaze met hers for a second. It was quick, almost imperceptible, but full of something neither of them dared to name. Nia, startled by the intensity, immediately looked down. Jonathan leaned back in his chair, trying to mask the confusion swelling in his chest. However, before the moment could soften, firm footsteps echoed in the hallway. One of the housekeepers was approaching. Nia's heart raced. If they discovered she was cooking for the children, it could mean the end of her time there. Jonathan lifted his eyes toward the door, still uncertain whether or not he would allow someone to interrupt that moment. The next morning, the mansion already breathed a different atmosphere. Sunlight streamed through the stained glass windows. The hallways shone even more polished than usual, and the movement of staff increased due to an important meeting scheduled for later in the afternoon. Nia arrived earlier than usual, leading Layla by the hand to the service entrance. Her heart beat fast, still fearing that the events of the previous evening, the improvised dinner, the children's laughter, and Jonathan's unexpected look might have consequences. But even before putting on her uniform, Nia noticed the different glances. 2 staff members were whispering near the supply locker. One of them, the middle-aged housekeeper, spoke in a low voice, but the tone dripped with poison. She brought her daughter into the house in secret. "She's taking advantage of the boss's trust," the other responded, almost smiling with malice. "And she even dared to cook in the main kitchen. Does she think this is some public diner?" Nia froze, her breath caught. She pretended not to hear, but the rumor was already spreading through the halls like wildfire. Other eyes turned toward her, some with disapproval, others with pure curiosity. She felt the weight of injustice crushing her shoulders. Later, she was called to the secondary office, a room used only for the mansion's administration. The manager, a graying man with a firm voice, stared at her without any cordiality. "Mrs. Adebayo, I've received some troubling reports. You brought your daughter into the residence, in clear violation of the house rules. And on top of that, you used the kitchen intended for Mr. Whitmore and his guests. Do you have anything to say in your defense?" Nia, with trembling hands clasped together, tried to maintain her dignity. "I had no one to leave my daughter with. I didn't want to miss work. As for the kitchen, Layla was hungry, and I just prepared something simple for the children." The manager remained unmoved. "Rules exist for a reason. We can't allow staff to blur the lines between their role and the Whitmore family." The words struck Nia like silent blades. She swallowed hard, but before she could answer, the door opened. Jonathan entered. Tall, imposing, his cold gaze swept across the room and landed on Nia for a moment. "What's the problem here?" he asked, his deep voice filling the room. The manager explained with artificial calm. "Mr. Whitmore, I believe it would be best to dismiss Mrs. Adebayo. Staff who disregard the rules could pose a risk to the order of the house." Jonathan crossed his arms, staring at Nia for a moment that felt far too long. She felt her heart sink, bracing for the verdict. But then he turned to the manager. "Dismiss her." His voice rumbled like thunder. Mrs. Adebayo broke nothing but routine. She cared for the children better than many we've hired for that purpose. She will not be fired. Silence fell instantly. The manager widened his eyes, trying to respond. "But sir, the gossip, the backlash." Jonathan interrupted him firmly. "Gossip doesn't interest me. What matters to me is the truth. And the truth is that she protected her daughter and brought life to this house." Nia felt tears well up in her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. She only lowered her head, whispering in an almost inaudible voice, "Thank you." Jonathan said nothing. He simply gave a look that mixed authority with something no one else in the room dared to interpret. As he left everyone in absolute silence, including Nia, who still trembled with the shock of being defended by the man who, until recently, seemed made of stone. She walked out of the room with unsteady steps, but her heart beat in a different way. For the first time, she realized that there was a crack in the wall surrounding Jonathan Whitmore, a sliver of light that just might change everything. If you've made it this far, comment "justice." That way I'll know you're enjoying the story, and will confuse the ones who only read the comments. The storm fell over Atlanta that night like a lament from the city itself. The Whitmore mansion looked even more imposing under the sound of rain hitting the stained glass and thunder echoing in the distance. The hallways were empty, and the staff had already retired. Jonathan was walking alone through the house, his coat draped over his shoulders, when he heard a muffled sound coming from the side room. A quiet sob. Curious, he approached silently. When he opened the door, he found Nia sitting near the unlit fireplace, still in her wrinkled cleaning uniform. Her tear-filled eyes shimmered in the dim light of the storm entering through the window. She clutched the silver chain around her neck tightly, as if seeking strength from something no longer there. Jonathan hesitated, but his voice broke the silence. "Are you all right?" Startled, Nia quickly wiped away the tears with the back of her hand. "I'm sorry, sir. I didn't mean for you to see me like this. It's unprofessional." He stepped inside and closed the door behind him, keeping his eyes firmly on her. It's not unprofessional to cry. It's human. His words made Nia collapse completely. She lowered her face, and the tears returned. "Sometimes the weight is more than I can bear. I was abandoned by my daughter's father when I needed him most. Since then, I've carried everything alone. I work through the night, sleep very little, and even then, I'm afraid I'll never be enough for her." Her voice trembled between sobs. "Layla deserves the world, but all I can offer is the bare minimum." Jonathan stayed silent for a few seconds, absorbing every word. He slowly approached and sat in the armchair across from her. For the first time, his blue eyes didn't carry just authority, but a hidden vulnerability. "I know what it's like to carry a burden alone," he said in a hoarse voice. "When my wife died, part of me died with her. Since then, I've been trying to be both, father and mother. But the truth is, I fail every day. My son looks at me, and sometimes I see disappointment. He needs warmth, and all I give him is silence." Nia raised her eyes, surprised. The rigidity she had always seen in him dissolved in that confession. It was as if the stone man was finally showing the cracks. "I thought you didn't have weaknesses," she murmured sincerely. Jonathan let out a heavy sigh. "Don't be fooled, Nia. I'm full of weaknesses. I just learned to hide them behind figures and glass walls." They both fell into silence for a moment, hearing only the rain pounding outside. The storm seemed to mirror what both of them carried inside: old wounds, lonely struggles, invisible scars. Jonathan extended his hand, hesitant, and didn't touch her, but left it close enough that Nia could feel the gesture. "You don't have to carry it all alone. No one should." She looked at that hand, then at his eyes. There was no pity, only understanding. For the first time, she felt that someone saw her pain without judging it. A quiet flame was born there, in the middle of the storm. A bond that couldn't be explained, built not on superficial attraction, but on the mutual recognition of wounds. Before another word could be spoken, a thunderclap shook the walls, and Layla called for her mother from the hallway, frightened by the rain. Nia quickly stood up, wiped her tears, and went to comfort her daughter. Jonathan remained alone in the room, staring at the cold fireplace, his hand still hovering in the air, as if he just held something that almost brought him back to life. The days that followed that stormy night changed the rhythm inside the mansion. The usual silence no longer seemed so oppressive, and the children ran through the hallways as if returning life to the cold walls. Nia, though still feeling like an outsider, noticed that Jonathan now watched her differently. He didn't say anything, but his look was no longer distant. There was curiosity. There was attentiveness. One gray afternoon, as the rain began to fall softly over Atlanta again, Nia was in the main room trying to calm Jonathan's son, who wouldn't stop crying. The boy was irritated, rejecting toys and even the milk prepared by the nanny. Nia, moved by maternal instinct, took him in her arms and began rocking him gently. "Shh, it's okay, little one. Your mom's not here, but you're not alone," she murmured softly, stroking the boy's brown hair. Layla, beside them, watched the scene with the innocent smile of someone who doesn't see social boundaries. "He likes you, Mommy. Look, he's almost asleep." And indeed, within minutes, the crying stopped. The boy rested his head on Nia's shoulder, breathing more calmly. The room, so used to the echo of firm footsteps and stern orders, was now filled with a quiet peace. Jonathan walked in at that moment. The scene stopped him in his tracks. His son, who for weeks had rejected everyone's arms, was peacefully asleep in Nia's embrace. And she, with her gentle expression, seemed to carry the tenderness the house itself had long forgotten. He stepped closer slowly, almost without realizing he was holding his breath. "How did you do that?" he asked in a low tone. Surprised? Nia looked up, slightly embarrassed. "I didn't do anything special, sir. I just treated him the way I treat my daughter. Children can tell when someone makes them feel safe." Jonathan stayed silent for a few seconds, staring at the scene like it was a personal miracle. Then, as he reached out to take his son, his hands touched Nia's. The gesture was brief, but it held an intensity neither of them expected. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. Nia felt the warmth of that hand like a spark under her skin. Her heart raced, and with a quick reflex, she pulled back, lowering her eyes. "No need to thank me, sir. I just did what was right." Jonathan remained still, now with his sleeping son in his arms, but his gaze remained on Nia. It was as if, in her, he had seen something he had been searching for since his wife's death. A reminder that it was still possible to feel love, even after swearing never to let it happen again. Nia, for her part, left the room in a hurry, afraid of what that closeness might mean. But no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't shake the feeling that his touch had awakened something her heart wasn't ready to face. In the silence that remained, Jonathan sat down with his son on his lap and murmured to himself, almost as a confession, "She brought peace back to this house, and to me." That night's dinner had been prepared down to every last detail. The Whitmore mansion sparkled like never before. Crystal chandeliers reflected soft light, and the long and imposing table was filled with businessmen, Jonathan's relatives, and members of Atlanta's high society. The air smelled of expensive wine, sophisticated perfumes, and ambition. But behind the raised glasses and rehearsed smiles, there was a veiled air of judgment. Nia, dressed simply but elegantly, was quietly helping Layla settle into a corner, away from the extravagance of the main table. Her heart was racing. She didn't belong there, Every sideways glance, every muffled whisper seemed to remind her that she was crossing invisible lines. One of Jonathan's aunts, a woman with a rigid posture and cold eyes, made a pointed comment loud enough for everyone to hear. "It's admirable. Jonathan's charity. Not every man welcomes." Staff into family settings. But of course, there are always those who know how to take advantage of someone else's generosity. A murmur ran along the table, and some guests hid condescending smiles behind their glasses. Nia lowered her head, squeezing Layla's hand tightly. Her blood pounded in her ears. Shame burned like fire. Jonathan, silent until then, slowly raised his eyes. His expression was serious, his lips pressed together. He placed his hands on the table and stood up before everyone. The silence fell like a blade. "That's enough." His voice echoed, deep and firm. "You only see a maid. I see the woman who brought life back into my house and into my heart." The words sliced through the air, filled with emotion and conviction. No one dared interrupt him. He continued, his voice even more intense. "Nia didn't come here for personal gain. She came because life was too cruel. But even then, she found the strength to keep going. While many of you hide behind conventions and prejudice, she was the one who brought warmth to my son and courage to me. If you don't accept it, that's not her problem. It's yours." Silence took over the room. Embarrassed glances shifted away. Glasses were quietly set down. The aunt who had made the remark swallowed hard, unable to respond. Nia raised her eyes, unable to contain the emotion. Tears rolled down silently. But this time they weren't from pain, they were from relief. She held Layla's hand tightly, as if that gesture were her anchor in the middle of a storm. Jonathan looked at her at that moment, and without caring about the stares, he allowed something to show in his eyes that he had hidden until then. It wasn't just defense, it was love. The atmosphere in the room was no longer the same. Jonathan's public gesture hadn't just protected her. It had sealed, in front of everyone, his choice, a love that didn't ask for permission to exist. If you've made it this far, comment, "Courage." That way I'll know you're enjoying the story, and we'll confuse the ones who only read the comments. Dinner had ended in silence, but nothing in that house would ever be the same. The days that followed brought whispers, veiled criticism, and even attempts to remove Nia from the mansion. But Jonathan, for the first time in years, didn't allow himself to be influenced. He stood firm, as if he had finally found something money had never given him, the courage to live according to his heart. Nia, despite the constant fear, walked with her head held high. She noticed the judgmental stares, but discovered they no longer affected her in the same way. Her dignity didn't depend on anyone's opinion. It lived in every step she took, in every battle she'd won, in every time she looked at Layla and saw in her daughter's eyes the certainty that she would never give up. On a peaceful afternoon, Jonathan found her in the back garden. The sun was casting a golden glow on the leaves, and Layla played with his son near the fountain. There was a free, honest laughter in the air, something different. Jonathan approached, his blue eyes fixed on Nia. "Nia," he said with a voice that was firm but full of emotion, "I spent my life believing that power was in control, in business, in numbers. But you showed me that true power is in the courage to love, even when the whole world stands against it." She took a deep breath, her hands trembling. "And I always thought my worth was in what I lacked, in the absence of money, of status, of recognition. But I learned that my dignity is in myself, in what I built alone. Love doesn't make me smaller, it makes me stronger." He stepped forward, extended his hand, and this time, she didn't pull away. Jonathan held Nia's hand under the orange sky, as if in that simple gesture, they were sealing a bond greater than any promise. Layla ran to her mother, grabbing her other hand. Jonathan's son, right behind, held his father's. And for a moment, they were all united, not by blood, but by choice. A family forged through pain, loss, and resilience. Jonathan looked at the four of them and, with a rare smile, murmured, "They'll never understand, but it doesn't matter. What matters is right here." Nia smiled, tears sliding silently down her face. And no one can take that away from us. The wind blew gently, as if the city itself were witnessing that new beginning. The mansion that once seemed cold now held something greater than all its luxury. True love, the kind that doesn't recognize boundaries of color, class, or origin. It was an unlikely love, born where society least expected, but one that would transform their lives forever. And that brings us to the end of this story, full of emotion, resilience, and true love. Now I want to hear from you. From 0 to 10, how much did this story touch your heart? Leave your rating in the comments. Like it if you enjoyed it. Share it so more people can discover it. And subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what's coming next. And before you go, I've already picked another moving story that's sure to touch you even more deeply.